Newstrack, I want to bring you a special investigation done by the India Today SIT, which looks at how people are back breaking the law, acting like complete Covidiots, doing parties, pool parties, and all kinds of things which are forbidden even at this moment. It's almost as if the second wave of COVID didn't happen, that we didn't all suffer, that people didn't die, because people have just now got the urge to go out and be out and about, and they couldn't care less about what this means for India, for Indians, and for the third wave, which could soon be upon us.
Bunched together, reveling in close quarters, taking the jars down, puffing and vaping in tight space. A shocking return of the rave in the national capital and its suburbs. This barely a month after India was battered by the pandemic's catastrophic second wave. Our investigation found how several pubs, restaurants and farmhouses in Delhi and its neighborhoods have turned into a breeding ground for a potential resurgence of the virus. A brazen violation of restrictions, an open invitation to another wave to strike back again. Behind the closed shutters of this bar and lounge in East Delhi, our investigative reporters discover cavalier guests partying no holds barred. Hooked to hookahs to socialize. One pipe shared by several. Drinking in proximity. Loud singing. All this when none of these pub activities are allowed in Delhi. The bar operators have no qualms. Pay them and get the party going.
अल्कोहल डीजे और हुक्का
A lounge in Gurugram brewing the same hazardous recipe on its premises. Bustling with patrons, their guards down as they drink and dance. No facial protection, no safe distancing. This when the Haryana government has allowed only 50% filling in bars, clubs and restaurants. That too with strict adherence to COVID-appropriate protocols. The club manager is also at ease with hosting late-night parties beyond the permissible 10 p.m. deadline in the state.
पार्टी का टाइमिंग क्या रहेगा? तो देखिए क्लियर होता है तो आपका रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट होता है आफ्टर दैट आपका मेन कोर्स होता है 7:30 बजे की पार्टी शुरू होगी। हां 7:30 आपका स्टार्ट होता है वहां 7:30 आपके लोग आते हैं 7:30 टू 10:30 आपका लेके जाएगा उसके बाद निकल जाएगा आपका तो वो मीटिंग में 1 मिनट आपका इंटरव्यू तक दिखा देगा फिर लगे फाइनल होगा 12 बज जाएगा। हां हम कहते हैं कि नहीं सर वो लोग इधर पार्टी करेंगे तो मास्क पहन रहा है पूरा मास्क नहीं है वो तो ऐसे होगा तो हैप्पी भाई तो काफी बात होगी पहला मैं
Forgetting COVID-19 very much exists. A perfect setting for the deadly disease to prey on with vengeance once again. A report by Mohammad Hizbullah, Jamshed Khan and Nitin Jain for India Today's Special Investigation Team.
So pubs and dance bars officially aren't open, hookah parties are most certainly not allowed, and you can't have large gatherings. But it doesn't seem to matter because people think the party's on, COVID's gone, and we can do what we want. Now, this is very dangerous. In fact, today the Delhi High Court came down hard on the state government, asking why are people being allowed into the markets in the way that they are? Why are greater curbs not being put? Remember, the virus is still out there. And it's not as if we drop our masks and let our guards down, that the virus will just vanish and go away. It's lurking, it's waiting to strike, and it will be back in the form of a third wave.
A city devastated by the second COVID wave. And this is what it looks like now. Crowded markets and malls, zero distance and mask protocol. Memories of the horrors have all evaporated. And the Covidiots of the capital appear to be issuing an open invitation to that dreaded third wave. As we have seen so often recently, the courts have had to step in. The Delhi High Court on Friday took unilateral cognizance of these disturbing images and has issued notices to the centre and Delhi governments asking them to explain why this is being allowed.
In a lot of places, people are forgetting the COVID protocols, because of which Delhi High Court judges have come down heavily, and they have said measures need to be put in place which need to be followed. Otherwise, we could see a definite third wave.
The High Court asked the centre and Delhi government to take strict measures, sensitize shopkeepers and hold meetings with markets and vendors associations in this regard. Television screens and social media have been flooded in the recent weeks with images of rampant crowding in markets across the national capital. From Delhi's Sadar Bazaar to Sarojini Nagar market to the upscale Khan market, Delhi citizens have exploded out onto the streets.
While crowds surge, shopkeepers say they are following all protocols.
Moreover, the people who come here, they are more educated, I would say, and more cautious about, COVID-appropriate behavior. So in Khan market, such problem is not being seen.
In first wave, I used to avoid sometimes. Sometimes I pull it down and all. But I think so now it's got a habit now. If I don't wear the mask, I feel something is missing in me. But this become now a part and parcel of our lifestyle only.
The irony of these images is that Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal said as many as 5,000 youth are being trained to work as assistants to doctors and nurses to mitigate possible shortages of medical staff during the third COVID-19 wave.
सरकार ने एक बहुत बड़ा एम्बिशियस प्लान बनाया है। 5,000 हेल्थ असिस्टेंट्स तैयार करने का। इनको टेक्निकल भाषा में कम्युनिटी नर्सिंग असिस्टेंट्स कहते हैं।
The decision comes after the Delhi government has already set up 2 committees to manage the third wave and mitigate its impact. But the unstoppable crowds in the capital won't stop tempting fate. Forgetting protocols is bad enough, but how could they forget the misery, the agony, the suffering that ravaged Delhi just weeks ago? With Aishwarya Paliwal in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
What all of us collectively went through in the months of April, May and till early June was a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. However, as we head to the end of this month, it seems as if all is forgotten, because a lot of these people we saw in those hookah bars, dance bars, in those rave parties just couldn't care. For them, life's back as it was earlier, and they're literally inviting a third wave. Now, on a very serious statistical note, if this is the manner in which people act, how soon could this third wave be upon us? What form and shape may it take? What can we do in terms of policy, in terms of behavior to prevent this? Because people clearly, many of them at least, have decided that enough is enough. We've been locked up for too long. Now we don't care. Let's get out of it. Joining me on this broadcast is Professor Maninder Agarwal. He's a professor at IIT Kanpur. He's been a member of the National COVID-19 Supermodel Committee of the government. We have Dr. Vishal Rao. He's a member of the Karnataka COVID Task Force, well-known oncologist. K. Sujata Rao has been a former health secretary. We have Aparajita Sarangi, Lok Sabha member of parliament, spokesperson for the BJP. Reena Gupta represents the Aam Aadmi Party, which was pulled up by the Delhi High Court today. I want to go across to Maninder Agarwal first. Professor, in that investigation, we saw how the demand for rave parties, hookah bars, swimming pools is now once again up and up in a very big way. If people continue to break norms and not follow COVID appropriate behavior, how soon do you think it will be before a third wave is upon us?
Well, it really depends. There are so many factors. Let's assume that people are going to behave the way we have seen in your clip. That certainly fulfills one precondition for a third wave, but there are other preconditions also, namely a very virulent mutant, which also needs to strike soon. We haven't seen a sign of it yet, but you never know when it can come. It may already be out there somewhere, still not made its impact on the population. So these, I really can't say when it can strike, but probability of it striking certainly increases by this, I should say, very careless behavior.
K. Sujata Rao, what do you make of our investigation and the fact that people are back out in the streets, in pubs, in bars, in discs, at swimming pools, smoking from each other's hookahs, as if, you know, COVID didn't happen? If you hadn't seen the horrors of the second wave, I would have still thought, okay, the first wave didn't impact as many people, so people didn't get mortally scared. But the second wave did. It hit every one of us in different ways, people around us. Many of them succumbing, many of them very badly ill, many of them unwell even at this moment. But now it seems as if that's forgotten. People getting into their cars, heading off to the hills. What are you making of this?
Rahul, what I make of it is that, you know, there is a limit to how much a human being can take pain and suffering. And that was, those scenes, the amount that people in Delhi suffered was really very, very acute. And I think once you lifted the lockdown, they just kind of went berserk. And we should have expected that and prepared ourselves for it. What I mean by that is, I think there should have been a very calibrated opening out and a massive amount of punitive action along with supportive information. Because let's face it, Rahul, in India, people don't have social discipline. It's like Japan. I mean, no matter how much they suffer, they have the social discipline of standing in queue, and others matter to them as much as their own, they matter for themselves. But we don't care. We just don't have that social discipline, and that needs to be instilled. So I think, you know, given the huge masses of people that we're dealing with and these kind of crowds that we're seeing, the only way is for doing social policing, not by doing danda lati, but social policing and massive amount of controls along with regulations. Why should a market be open like that, for example, as I see on your screen? Why should the whole market be opened up at one go? So I think staggering of crowds, I think is much more of education and definitely punitive action. Let me just end with one point. If you remember the Commonwealth Games, there was that rule that where the buses of the Commonwealth players will go, if you got into that lane, you would be fined 2,000 rupees. And how well the Delhiites behaved, only because the fine was so high. So I think, you know, your investigative reporting is superb. And if Delhi could start just with that, and that Malik or whoever the gentleman is that you even put out on the screen, if stringent action could be taken, close down all those pubs, close down all those wherever they had these kind of rave parties, I think that would go, the message will go down that Delhi means business. Because you can't.
No, but these pubs and clubs aren't supposed to be open. It's not as if they've been given permission by the government to open up. These are being run surreptitiously at this moment. Reena Gupta, your government got held from the High Court. Very serious questions were asked today about why markets were opened up in the way that they were, why more restrictions were not in place. What are you making of this investigation and the fact that people seem to be back in clubs, in pubs, in hookah bars, at swimming pools? They don't seem to care very much about your government's norms, and clearly you've loosened up too soon.
Rahul, Delhi government has always said that lockdown is really not a solution. People are tired of being at home. The solution has to be massive vaccination. And we've been saying this for months now, that you give us more vaccines, and we have enough infrastructure in place. We can vaccinate up to 3 lakh people a day and finish vaccinating the whole of Delhi in 2 months. Because, as you said rightly, pubs are not supposed to be open. Spas
but that's
are not
an
supposed to be
unreasonable
open.
ask. Reena, 1 second. No, 1 second, ma'am. The fact is that vaccine production and supply is limited. Delhi is getting its fair share. So must other states like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, states in the south, states in the west, states in the northeast, everywhere. So you can't say, forget about the others, give all the vaccines to the capital because we happen to be the capital, we can ramp up fastest. It cannot work like that. Vaccines have to be equitably distributed. Delhi is getting its maximum possible fair share. So you have to have another strategy which is not solely dependent on vaccines, where you can protect us from a third wave without trying to pass the blame to the central government or to the vaccine manufacturers.
Can I complete, Rahul? So actually the issue is that even now, the central government is not doing its job to ensure that there's enough vaccine supply in the country. A month ago, there was that massive grand press conference where they threw out the number of 200 crore vaccines. What has happened from that day to today? We still don't have any new approvals. We still don't have Covaxing sharing its formula with other manufacturers. So the central government is actually not moving at all in terms of the vaccination supply. And if you look at the June data, again, whatever they had projected up to 12 crore vaccines in June. We are going to be falling massively short of that vaccination. So at this rate, how long will you keep the people inside? People are telling us that या तो हम कोविड से मर जाएंगे, नहीं तो हम भूखे मर जाएंगे. So you have to realize, in a country like India, up to 70% of the population is dependent on daily wages. People need to go out and work. And how do you ensure that they're safe? You vaccinate as many people as possible. In Delhi, 30% of the population of Delhi has received its first vaccine till
Renu
now.
Gupta from the Aam Aadmi Party says that the central government is to blame because you haven't been able to ramp up vaccine supply. They can't keep people locked at home. They have to allow people out. Restrictions have to be eased. Therefore, it's the central government which is at fault for not being able to supply more vaccines.
A very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I thank India Today for carrying out this investigation. And I also thank you for all these disturbing pictures having been brought before all of us. We need to see ourselves in the mirror, and we should have lessons from these pictures. In fact, today the recovery rate is, as we know, 3.24%. The positivity rate is 3.24%, and the recovery rate is as high as 96%, with around 62,480 cases in the last 24 hours. Because of these figures, because of this situation, people have become complacent. So at this juncture, I think we need to go for, yes, massive vaccination, but at the same time, we must ensure that the people follow COVID-appropriate norms. It's very important. Whichever the state government is, the implementation of their policies is their responsibility. And I expect that the Delhi government will come up with some stringent rules against those who are not following the COVID-appropriate norms. I fully endorse the views of Madam Sujata Rao, who was former health secretary. There has to be some punitive action. Unless and until it is done by the Delhi government, things will not be
Reena Gupta, does your government have a plan? How will fines be increased? To what extent are you going to punish people who are not following norms? Because you have to ensure that there is punitive action taken against these Covidiots.
Rahul, let me complete. Please let me complete, and then we can hear the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson. Now, let me tell you that as far as the vaccination part is concerned, the central government is seized of the matter, and we have been emphasizing that the Dawai Bhi, Padai Bhi, and Suraksha Kavach will be given to the entire population by 31st of December. Now, here is the plan. Unfortunately, the Aam Aadmi Party people or the Congress people, they do not come to any TV channel with any kind of homework done. They are not aware of what has happened, and that is why they display their ignorance here. The blueprint, the action plan of the central government is already out in the open. Now, let me just be given 30 seconds. 8 crore vaccine doses in May, 10 crore in June. It's not 12 crore now, it's 10 crore in June, 17 crore in July, 19 crore in August, 42 crore in September, 46 crore in October, 56 crore in November, and 59 crore in December. All these total to 257 crore vaccine doses by 31st of December that will be administered by the central government in association with the states. The states are implementing the entire vaccine plan of the central government. And let me tell you that all the procurement, etc., the procurement plan, the action plan, etc., the production plan, all have been put in place. There is no problem. The figures have been given. I would not have given you the figures. I'm giving you the figures because that is what has been placed by the central government.
Okay, so Reena Gupta, respond to the question about punitive measures. Is your government planning to impose greater penalties on those who are out and about, not following norms? Because clearly your penalties at this time don't seem to be warding people off. They couldn't care. What's your plan to try and punish them so that they stay home, or is that strategy going to work at all?
Rahul, we have one of the highest fines for not following COVID appropriate behavior anywhere in the country. But, I keep coming back to the same point. The BJP spokesperson can throw one positivity capsule per day. They keep revising their targets. Their target was 12 crores. Now it's come down again. But, the question to be asked is that what are they actually doing to increase the vaccine supply? Have any new vaccines been approved from the last press conference that they did? Has Bharat Biotech shared its formula with any of the other PSUs? Where are these new vaccines which are going to be approved? Why are they not being approved? And the rate, in June, we are still vaccinating 30 lakh people per day. At this rate, it will be 2023 till we vaccinate the whole country. And by 2023, we would have added another 30 crore people who would have turned 18 plus. So, which world are we living in? The government of India has already moved on to UP elections. They're not interested in ensuring a vaccine supply for the country. And unless you have a vaccine supply, there is no way we can, we can save ourselves from a third wave or a fourth wave. Vaccination is the only way to go, Rahul. There is no other way.
Okay.
I would like to mention here, Rahul, please allow me
what's
to speak
happening in the capital is happening in other parts of the country also. Right. I'll come back to you, Parijata. What can we do to try and ensure that people don't act as recklessly? Because, fines and police action can only take you this far and no further. If people themselves say that they don't care, it's their life, they're okay with taking the risk, then what really can we do as police, as a state, as people to ensure that the recklessness of others doesn't kill us?
Rahul, for me, looking at what pictures India Today showed and what India Today looked like was a little shocking for me. I think it comes to the fact that during COVID, we know that there is a loss of sense of smell, but it looks like we've lost a lot of common sense among the people today. And I think this is a disrespect to the healthcare workers who have toiled for the last 1.5 years without taking leaves, being away from the family, saving lives. And when we see such disturbing facts, it just goes to fact that such kind of stupidity and irresponsibility is among the educated class itself is very disturbing. We all need to understand that it is we who are moving the virus. It is not the virus moving by itself. This virus does not have hands and legs. We are the ones moving this virus. And I think the important responsibility here is, this is a socio-economic virus. The more social activity, the more economic activity, the more this virus will explode. And not to forget that new variants are causing new herds and new waves. So we cannot be complacent at this time when we know that there are more than 8,000 variants that are out there. So the third wave seems to be imminent. And what I believe is that the more number of Covidiots, it is inversely proportional to the way the gap between the second and the third wave. We are going to be inviting it and again going to go back into the hospitals. We will not be winning these wars in the hospitals. I think the people need to understand this.
You know, what we're also seeing are a whole bunch of people leaving cities like Bengaluru, leaving cities like Delhi, Chandigarh, and heading off for the hills. So much so that in a place like Himachal Pradesh, where they've said that now you don't need an RT-PCR test negative to get in, you've seen huge traffic jams, hotels booked up, people again showing that, you know, they've had enough of staying locked up, they want to go out, and they're willing to take more than their fair share of risks to be able to escape from the lockdown.
Delhiites are breaking free. And it's the highway to Himachal Pradesh they're taking after weeks of being cooped up in their homes because of the lockdown. Himachal Pradesh is welcoming them. Starved of tourist revenue in summer, Himachal is allowing tourists in without an RT-PCR test certificate. All that tourists have to do is register themselves on the state's COVID portal and get a COVID e-pass. Shimla and Manali are the favorite destinations. More than 3,000 tourists arrived in Manali last week. 5,000 checked into Shimla.
बाहर निकलने का काफ़ी मन हो रहा था, तो इसीलिए जैसे ही लॉकडाउन खुला तो बाहर आ गए घूमने के लिए। घर पे बोर फील कर रहे थे और सारा जो था हमारा जो दिनचर्या वो एकदम से रुक सी गई थी।
लोग पूरा सर कहीं भी निकल रहे हैं, मास्क पहन के निकल रहे हैं, सबकी जेब में आपको इंडिविजुअल सैनिटाइजर मिलेगा। जहाँ जहाँ हमारे को मौका मिल रहा है वहाँ हम लोग हैंड वॉश भी कर रहे हैं।
हमने पहले प्लानिंग तो कर रखी थी, लेकिन यहाँ पे ई पास और कोविड RT-PCR कोरोना बहुत ज़्यादा था, तो सोच रहे थे कि बाहर आएंगे, क्या पता कोरोना हो जाए, कुछ हो जाए। फिर एकदम से मन हुआ, जैसे हिमाचल खुला तो हम सीधा मनाली आ गए।
But it's still not like any other summer in normal times in Himachal. The occupancy in hotels is around 30 to 40%. Hotel owners feel the COVID e-pass requirement could be the reason for a lower footfall.
E-pass बनाने में और ऑनलाइन जाने में काफ़ी दिक्कत हो रही है गेस्टों को। वो होटल वालों को रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं, होटल वाले जब एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के पास करते हैं तो उनके पास काफ़ी लाइन लगी रहती है। गेस्ट काफ़ी हरास हो जाते हैं इसमें, तो इसमें अगर थोड़ा सा इजी वे कर दें इसको तो काफ़ी फ़र्क पड़ेगा आने वाले टाइम पे।
Nearly 10,000 people had applied for COVID passes to enter Himachal, but only 3,000 were issued.
जो इंटरस्टेट मूवमेंट के लिए कुछ जो रिस्ट्रिक्शन लगी थी उसमें रिलैक्सेशंस दी हैं। रजिस्ट्रेशन का प्रोसेस अभी भी कायम है, लेकिन जो RT-PCR टेस्ट जो है वही उसको ही हमने रिलैक्स किया है।
Although it has eased norms, the Himachal government is not lifting its guard entirely, particularly with a third wave lurking in the near future. It's quite obvious that the tourism industry, which contributes to over 7% of the state's GDP and employs thousands, will have to wait before full normalcy returns. Bureau Report, India Today.
So in this part of the conversation, I want to ask all our guests about possible solutions. You know, what can be done given the fact that people are fatigued, as am I, as I'm sure most people who are watching this broadcast because of all the lockdowns we've been cooped in. You want to get out, get a break, but you don't want to end up at the Mall Road in Shimla with thousands of other people and then run the risk of getting the virus. So, K. Sujata Rao, do you have any sensible policy interventions or suggestions that you think governments, the police, people should follow so that, you know, the situation doesn't get aggravated?
You know, my solutions won't be very popular, Rahul, because I do believe that, you know, considering that the vaccination hasn't been, we haven't saturated the population with our vaccination, and also because the mutant, the virus can certainly, if it finds so many people who are vulnerable, can change again, and already we've heard in the papers 617.2 has now come, and what its nature characteristic is that we really don't know. So I don't think it's very, very safe. We are not still out of wave 2. And that was a wrong message given by opening up so immediately just because cases fell. So I think the Himachal, I can understand the tourist lobby that's putting huge pressure on the government. I can understand that. But I think they just have to be responsible and regulate the traffic. They just simply cannot allow tourists to come in this manner. So what I would say is they must make a RT-PCR mandatory for any entry. It's a very fragile ecosystem also, this part of India, and ensure strict occupancy rates in the hotels and so on. But I don't think we should allow this free-for-all movement to be permitted.
Dr. Vishal Rao, what are your concrete suggestions which are practical, which will not lead to people pushing back and yet can ensure that we don't advance the third wave and don't bring it upon us sooner than we need to?
Rahul, if you hear Singapore's end of the circuit breaker model, they divided their opening into 3 parts. The first phase, which is the safe reopening, the second phase, which is the safe transition, and the third phase, which is the safe state. And they emphasized that the first phase should be about reopening the economy and not the social activities and entertainment. Very, very clear, very simple. So you focus on economy, you focus on daily wages, but do not encourage social and entertainment activities. And I think that should be the clear message out here, that when we enter into the phase of safe opening, we need to be very, very important and prioritize the daily wages, the people who want to live for the daily living, and in a restricted manner, look at that group, but not the social and entertainment group. It's an absolute no at this juncture. The second phase, which is the safe transition phase, if the positivity rate is below 5% consistently with testing being high and no new strains being picked up with genomic surveillance, then move towards the slow aspect of social and economic, the social and entertainment activities. And as we ramp up with at least 60% vaccination, we move towards the safe state. I think it's very, very simple. What the end of the circuit breaker model Singapore is showing is a logical model. It's a simple model. We are not talking about complex mathematics or any kind of heavy epidemiology. It's a very simple thing that we need to understand here. And I think that would be my suggestion.
Reena Gupta, are you on the back of the India Today investigation now willing to reassess your norms? Do you accept that the AAP government maybe opened up too soon, which allowed people to get more relaxed than they should have? What do you intend to do to try and pull in the reins?
So Rahul, I think, through your channel, the message I would like to give is that if your livelihood is not dependent on going out every day, then please stay at home, work from home, do not socialize. But having said that, there is a category of people that needs to go out every day. They need to work on their livelihood every day, and they would need to go out in order to ensure that there's food in their houses. At the same time, my request to the central government is that please, on a war footing, ensure that the vaccination supply in the country needs to be increased. There are still several things which the Delhi government has suggested, that the Supreme Court has suggested that needs to be done, including compulsory licensing, including involving PSUs for manufacturing. But we are still not doing that. We are still not approving new vaccines. So we'll have to do both of these things. Improve, increase the pace of vaccination in the country. We are in it together, the whole country. As you're seeing, people are moving from one state to the other. So if Delhi is vaccinated and the neighboring states are not vaccinated, it's not like we're not going to be safe. The whole country, we have to really ramp up vaccination and then continue to open slowly. And your investigation, I've taken heed of that, and we will definitely increase more checks and balances to ensure that such COVID inappropriate behavior can be stopped.
Parajatra Sarangi, do you have a plan on what the central government should be doing to push back the third wave? Because one, people have to behave responsibly, which they clearly not. The AAP government says they'll review their norms. does the central, do you as a spokesperson of the ruling party at the centre have suggestions on what can be done?
Certainly. In fact, there is definitely an action plan before the central government with support from the state governments. We are implementing that plan. I told you, we would be vaccinating the entire eligible population as soon as possible. We are on the job. I gave you the figures, so that these are the figures. And at the same time, let me tell you that unlocking by the states has to be in a gradual, in a phased manner, and which district to open, how much to open, should be done very carefully. I know of some of the state governments who have actually put in a lot of efforts in analyzing the situation district-wise. What they have done is they have looked at the positivity rate, the number of deaths, the number of new cases, etc. And then there have been states where some of the districts have actually gone for more relaxation and some of the districts have gone for very less relaxation. It has to be very gradual and very in a phased manner it should be done. Certainly, in Delhi, all the
in
malls,
conclusion,
etc. have been
what
opened,
do you
it should not
think,
have been done.
if things
So I
are
think
the
we've
way
all
they are,
taken some
what is your
inputs.
estimate of when the third wave could be upon us? How are you gaming it at this moment? What are your simulations showing you? When could, I mean, of course, a lot depends on the pace of vaccination, how people behave, etc., etc. But if, on the basis of our best sense, what can you tell us about when this third wave is most likely to hit?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. The real clincher here is the pace of vaccination. And as the numbers that I see monthly wise put out by the government of India, if we are able to match that schedule more or less, then despite such a COVID inappropriate behavior, I believe that the third wave, even if it comes, its intensity will probably not be as high as the second wave. So that's the thing, and I think the vaccination here plays a most important role.
So that's reassuring, but I just want to say at the end that, we're all responsible for our own lives, our own health, for the lives and health of those around us. And if we decide to let the guard down, if you decide to go to a hookah bar, to a swimming pool, or to a rave party or a disc, then you're inviting trouble. That's the fact. You decide how safe you want to stay, because ultimately it's about your life. It's about your health. It's about whether you live or the virus does.